Not particularly, no.
I think it's pretty minimal. You can definitely tell their sort of personality straight away.
None whatsoever.
So we may do a print and have a look at what is being shown in the hands now. So it's our job really to encourage people to live their own lives. I'm not a doctor, so I wouldn't go there. And so I thought I'd learn the subject and understand what on earth she was talking about. A lot of people would expect bored housewives and people with nothing better to do. But in fact, the truth is you tend to get all sorts of people.
Frank Clifford is an astrologer and palmist. What does an astrologer do?
An astrologer will take your date, place and time of birth, construct a map of the heavens, a horoscope that will look at temperament, character, emotional needs and a number of other different factors.
What does being a palmist mean?
Well, as a palmist it's quite different from being an astrologer. A palmist will look at your hands as they are now. Of course, we may do a print and have a look at what is being shown in the hands now. But whereas astrology is a birth chart set up, a horoscope set up for somebody's birth moment, the hands are your living hands, so they've developed and grown with you, of course. So they reflect where you are today and what you do. And palmists will read, again, character, perhaps past events, possible future events from the hand.
So can astrologers and palmists predict people's future?
A lot of astrologers and palmists would say that it's not really about reading somebody's future, it's about understanding where they are today and being able to understand who they are, where they are today and future possibilities. And I think people should come to a palmist or astrologer not to be told about an unalterable destiny or future, but to be told or given tools enough to make it themselves and be very proactive in that area themselves. So it's our job really to encourage people to live their own lives and decide their own future, not feel as though it's written anywhere and that they have nothing to do or say about the outcome.
If you saw on someone's hand that they were going to have a serious illness, would you tell them?
I'm not a doctor, so I wouldn't go there. I certainly wouldn't talk about anything medical. But if somebody comes and they've had cancer or they're in the process of being treated for an illness, that's something we might discuss. But it's certainly something I wouldn't predict because I don't necessarily believe in making predictions.
How should people choose which astrologer or which palm reader to see?
Well, I would recommend going to somebody who has been recommended to you. There are a lot of people out there who, a lot of people doing a genuine job, but will talk about things that no palmist really should talk about, like health matters, as I've spoken about, death, other illnesses, things that take away somebody's ability or right to choose. The reason that I got into palmistry was at the age of 17. I was told by a promise that I would be married at 21 and then my partner would die, which scared the life out of me at the time, and I felt I had this curse on my back. And so I thought I'd learn the subject and understand what on earth she was talking about, and I realised that what she was looking at was a very big if, a very big possibility rather than a probability, and it never happened.
What kind of people come to see you?
A lot of people would expect bored housewives and people with nothing better to do or too much money, more money than sense, to come. But in fact, the truth is you tend to get all sorts of people from every type of walk of life. I've had sports people, politicians, people in the media, in every type of profession you can think of. Male, female, usually tends to be more women. You tend to get more men looking at palmistry because it's perhaps more physical and open, and they feel that some men tell me that they believe more in the hand rather than the horoscope, because the horoscope is something that women read in their magazines or newspapers.
Do you ever look at your own future?
Well, rather than try to look at my own future or predict it, I try and have it. I try and experience it. And I don't think most astrologers or palmists actually do predict or try to predict what's going on in their lives. They just live it from day to day, as anyone else would. But they try to live it with some understanding and some knowledge, or at least some meaning of why we're here and what is happening at this time.
How do you feel when you fly?
I love it. I really love flying. I like going to different places. Doesn't matter how long it takes. I just love flying.
What do you least like about flying?
The meals on the plane. That's what I don't like about flying.
Have you ever had a frustrating experience when you were flying?
Yes, I did actually last year, but it wasn't actually on the plane. It was beforehand. I had too much luggage at Delhi Airport, and they wouldn't let me on the plane. And they were trying to say that I had to pay a lot of money, but eventually I bribed somebody.
How do you feel when you fly?
I love flying. I do.
What do you least like about flying?
I don't like turbulence a lot because when it shakes, it makes me a little nervous. But I like flying because you're isolated and you can't use your cell phone or anything. I like that.
Have you ever had a frustrating experience when you were flying?
Yeah, one time they lost my baggage, so I had to spend my holiday without my luggage.
How do you feel when you fly?
Predominantly comfortable. I think it's a state of mind.
What do you least like about flying?
That I'm not in control of the situation that I'm in. That I'm putting my safety in somebody else's hands.
Have you ever had a frustrating experience when you were flying?
Air travel, security-wise, is very frustrating. Not being able to take things on a plane and the huge queues at the airports.
How do you feel when you fly?
Safe. I mean, I have no problems with travelling at all. Security checks are a bit annoying, but it's kind of necessary evil, I suppose.
What do you least like about flying?
Probably either the leg room or the food. Probably the two worst.
Have you ever had a frustrating experience when you were flying?
Stopover in Chicago for quite a while, a few years ago, but nothing major. No.
You need to be trained to deal with it quickly, efficiently. Just someone who's a team player, really. Yeah, it's good. Wouldn't change it for the world. You do suffer a lot, but you know, it's part of the job. You just sort of get on with it. Poor guy. I felt really sorry for him. I feel really safe up there. Really safe. Otherwise I wouldn't do it.
Hayley Levine is a flight attendant with First Choice Airways. What made you want to be a flight attendant?
I never really wanted to be a flight attendant. I just kind of knew I always wanted to travel. Always had this idea I wanted to see the world. Saw an advert in a newspaper, went for the interview, got the job and loved it. So, and it's definitely for me. Definitely.
What kind of training did you have?
In order to become a flight attendant, you have your group interview first, you're singled out, you have a one-on-one interview, and then if you pass that stage, you go on to your training, which is 5 weeks. First week's all about customer service, relations, things like that. And then you go on to all your safety training, which is 4 weeks, intensive training. You know, how to deal with fires, evacuations, water landing, passengers. And then you're quite well trained on immediate care. So, you know, it's quite an important part of our job. If something happens up in the air, something medical, you know, you need to be trained to deal with it quickly, efficiently.
What kind of person do you think the airlines are looking for? I mean, what kind of person makes a good flight attendant?
I don't know exactly what they're looking for, but I can only think they look for someone who's quite outgoing, someone who's quite can work well in a team. You have to be a certain kind of character to do what we do. I mean, you fly with different people every day. You know, you go into work, anything could happen. There's thousands and thousands of crew. You don't work with the same people. You need to be able to just get on with people that you've never met before, work under pressure sometimes. So I think they're looking for someone who's, you know, quite competent in what they do, quite confident. Just someone who's a team player, really.
Tell me, what do you think are good and bad sides of the job?
Good sides, obviously, I get to see the world pretty much for free. I mean, that's amazing. You couldn't ask for anything more, really. Bad sides, probably sick bags, probably. And obviously it's really galling on your social life. It's more like a way of living than a job. You know, you have to work around it. So, but yeah, it's good. Wouldn't change it for the world.
Are there any other downsides?
Probably the jet lag, that's quite bad. Definitely, you do suffer a lot, but, you know, it's part of the job. You just sort of get on with it.
Have you got any tips for dealing with jet lag?
Tips? I don't wear a watch. Sometimes that helps. And if you're going sort of east, you just try and stay up. Just try and fight the jet lag. It's the best way. I definitely find it easier going east than I do west. I don't know why that is.
You must come into contact with a lot of passengers who are afraid of flying. How do you deal with this?
A lot of passengers that are afraid of flying. There's not really a lot you can do. Just try and sit and talk to them, calm them down. I think your confidence is sort of always a good booster as well, if they know that you're confident in what you do. I think that helps. Most of them are okay after takeoff. It's just that initial getting into the air, and then they're all right.
How can you tell if someone's scared?
If they're a scared flyer, they do usually let you know, or they walk on shaking so much it's pretty obvious that they're scared of flying. You do feel sorry for them. Everyone's scared of something. So, but yeah, they usually make themselves known. Yeah, or come straight up and ask for vodka. That's when you usually know someone's scared of flying. I did have a guy once though, just before takeoff, and he was really, really scared of flying, and I'd spent a good half an hour with him before the flight, trying to calm him down, and we just got towards takeoff, and he tried to open the emergency exit door. He was having a panic attack. So yeah, that was probably the worst thing. He didn't want to fly, we got him off. Poor guy, I felt really sorry for him.
Have you ever been in a dangerous situation? For example, have you had to evacuate a plane?
I've never had to evacuate an aircraft, never, and hopefully never will. But we're trained to do that, so, you know, really well trained to do that. But hopefully nothing like that will ever happen. I've never even remotely come close to it, so that's good.
Have you ever felt nervous or frightened on a flight?
No, not really, never actually. I think the worst thing's probably a bit of turbulence, but to be honest, that's an excuse to sit down and have a cup of tea, so you know. No, I've never really felt frightened in the air. I feel really safe up there. Really safe. Otherwise I wouldn't do it.
Have you ever done any high-risk sports or activities?
Yeah, I've done skiing.
What was it like?
It was pretty difficult because it's difficult to coordinate. So it was scary and it was funny and I was just making fool of myself.
Have you ever done any high-risk sports or activities?
Not really, no, except for potholing, but that was in my younger days.
What was it like?
I wouldn't say it was particularly high risk, but it was a very enjoyable experience.
Is there anything you'd like to try?
I've always wanted to try skiing, but I've never done it. But I think that would be really exciting to go skiing and go down the mountains free and what have you. But I think I'm a bit old now.
Have you ever done any high-risk sports or activities?
Yeah, I've jumped out of a plane.
What was it like?
Oh, it's awesome. You see the ground below you and the plane door opens and you're suddenly, the distance goes like from there to there. As soon as the door opens, you're suddenly, you're hurtling towards the ground at, a couple 100 miles an hour or whatever. And your chute opens and you get sucked back up into the sky. It's kind of cool.
Have you ever done any high-risk sports or activities?
I've climbed, I've caved, I've whitewater rafted down the Zambezi. Do they count?
But generally the people who practice would go to a particular spot. Someone leading the way and the rest following. And had to just change my life around and become sensible all of a sudden. On the face of it, what we do seems to be quite dangerous. To a degree, the risk element played a part. As long as you start out very small scale.
Easy is a free runner who started the organisation Urban Free Flow. Free runners use obstacles in a town or city to create movement by running, jumping and climbing. Can you do free running anywhere? I mean, for example, if you're on your way somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, if you wanted to, you could kind of, do it anywhere, and if you're on your way to work, you could do it. But generally, the people who practice would go to a particular spot and practice there, and then move on elsewhere.
Where do you most enjoy doing it?
The most rewarding for me would be running in London here, around the South Bank, and we do it in a team of maybe 10 of us, and just someone leading the way and the rest following, and just using basic obstacles like lampposts and walls and just moving.
How did you first get into free running?
Well, my background is in boxing, which I did for about 20 years, and I boxed at international level, and I got married and had a kid and had to just change my life around and become sensible all of a sudden. So I gave up the boxing, and there was a huge void in my life, so I drifted into martial arts, which didn't really do it for me. And I was looking for the next thing to do, and I saw this on TV one day, and I remember sitting in bed watching it, and I said, that's what I'm looking for.
Tell us about the organisation Urban Free Flow.
Well, Urban Free Flow started out as a website, but then we devised a performance team. We have 20 athletes in the team now, 8 who are very, very high profile. We're sponsored by Adidas now. We take care of all sorts of commercials and movies in that sense. We teach as well. We teach in schools. We've taught the army, the police.
What do you do with the police?
The police run these schemes for youth offenders, and they're trying to get them out of doing bad things. So it's seen as a positive thing to do. It's seen as a very cool thing to do, and for the youth, it's very engaging. So that's what we do for them.
What about in schools?
In terms of schools, same again. There's a big problem in the UK with obesity, and kids just aren't practising anything. They're not doing any PE, they're not doing any kind of sports. Whereas what we do is perceived as being very cool, and unwittingly they're taking part and exercising. So that seems to be a very positive thing.
How dangerous is free running?
On the face of it, what we do seems to be quite dangerous, but it doesn't touch on what we do. We're very, very safety conscious. We work in movies, commercials, where safety is paramount. I mean, everything we do is calculated. There's no risk taking. If you see a big jump being done, we'd have practiced that at ground level thousands of times, over and over and over. I think, if anything, the key word for what we do is repetition.
What attracted you especially about free running? Was it the risk element?
To a degree, the risk element played a part, but it was more about the sense of freedom, the way to be able to move within your environment with no limitations. You don't need any equipment to take part, no skateboard or no BMX. You could just a pair of trainers and I'm ready to go. That was the real draw for me, just the freedom aspect.
Have you had many accidents since you've been doing it?
Well, if you're practicing this sport, you will pick up the odd scrapes here and there. You get blisters on your hands and calluses, which is normal. You might get the odd sprained ankle. Personally, I fell out of a tree once and fell on my head, which wasn't very nice, and I had to go to hospital here.
Is free running really something that anyone can do?
It helps if you have a background in some kind of sport, but it isn't essential. You can start from being a complete beginner. Gymnastics would help, but you could be just someone who plays football or does a bit of running and pick it up straight away. As long as you start out very small scale and take your time, there's no problem.
Have you ever acted?
I was in a music video once, and that's about as far as I've gone. But I mean, I'm a musician, so I kind of appear on stage quite a lot.
How does it make you feel?
I suppose nervous at first, but then you settle in within a couple of minutes, and before you know it, you kind of lose any awareness of kind of any external factors or anything like that. You're not aware of anything else outside of this kind of bubble that you've kind of managed to transport yourself into.
Have you ever acted?
Yes, I was in the Royal Shakespeare Company up in my area and did a few plays and a few musicals, and I'm a specialist makeup artist, so I kind of work with actors doing all their makeup and zombies and that.
What do you like about it?
The buzz of it, being able to be someone else in front of people, and just being someone else is good.
Have you ever acted?
Yes, I have. I'm studying acting now. I'm a student studying theatre and music. I've been in a few things when I was little, and I've been in a few shows around London and things like that. But I plan to go further.
How does it make you feel?
I love it. I think it's really great because you don't have to be yourself for once. You're on stage and you can just be whoever your character's meant to be, and you can just sort of get taken away into this other world, and you can get really into it. That's what I really like about acting.
Have you ever acted?
Yeah, I'm in like a drama youth group, so a couple of plays I've been in, like Bugsy Malone and The Wizard of Oz, modernised one and stuff, so yeah.
How does it make you feel?
Yeah, it is nerve-wracking when just as you're about to go on, but apart from that, yeah, once you're on, it's fine.
Have you ever acted?
Possibly not since I was at school. No, I don't think. Not since I was at school, no.
How did it make you feel?
Very nervous beforehand, very apprehensive beforehand, and then quite excited when it all went well, yes.
There isn't much I don't do, I guess, as far as acting goes. You just show up and you're expected to know all your lines. You do it a few times and that's it. It's amazing the difference it makes when the writing is good. I gave the other guy 3 stitches on his fingers at one point when he parried in the wrong place. You get to do it over and over again.
Trevor White is a Canadian actor. Can you tell us a bit about the kind of acting you do?
There isn't much I don't do, I guess, as far as acting goes. There's theater, obviously, film work, television work, sometimes commercials, and even voiceover work, which is for radio or for television, or even sometimes animated shows where you lend your voice to those as well. So I've rarely said no to an acting job.
Did you always want to be an actor?
Well, it's something that I always loved to do, act, as a kid in high school and school plays, and in my spare time just playing around with friends, acting and improvising and that kind of thing. But I don't think I ever believed that I could or ever took it seriously to act as a profession. Or for the rest of my life. So I went into university and took economics as a more practical thing to do, but I didn't really enjoy it, I guess, and ultimately after university I started taking some acting classes and really enjoyed that, and then started doing student films and fringe theater and unpaid work just to get experience in acting, and loved it, and then started doing it more seriously and got an agent and started getting proper acting jobs, and that was about 13 years ago.
What's the most difficult thing about preparing for a new role?
It really depends. When you do a play, for example, you have 3, 4, sometimes even 6 weeks to rehearse with the other people and the director and the props and everything. So you have a long time to learn your lines, to as it were, find the character. The memorization is the most like real work. That can be difficult, just memorizing lots of lines. But and in film and television, you don't have the benefit of rehearsal. You just show up and you're expected to know all your lines, and then you do it a few times, and that's it. So you have to be very disciplined and get all that ready in advance.
How do you learn your lines?
I have a dictaphone, actually, which I just record the other people's lines, obviously in my voice. I don't do strange character voices, because that would be weird. I just say their line, I stop it, I say my line, I play the next line. So you just basically record all the other lines in any given scene, and play it back and just work through it slowly. It's amazing the difference it makes when the writing is good and it makes sense. It's much easier to memorize. But if sometimes you audition for a bad science fiction TV show or a horror movie or something, you often have a much harder time memorizing poorly written lines because they're just bad. But of course it's your job, so you do it.
Is there any role you've particularly enjoyed?
There's a few roles that I've played, or oftentimes when you do something, it's the whole experience of a job, not necessarily just the part you have in it. Earlier this year, I got to work for the Royal Shakespeare Company for the first time, and we did Coriolanus, one of Shakespeare's lesser performed plays, in Stratford, in Washington, in America, also in Newcastle here in the United Kingdom, and in Madrid in Spain for 5 months, which was amazing.
What's the most difficult role that you've ever had to play?
Well, I suppose this last role that I played is one of the most difficult parts, Tullus Ophidius in Coriolanus, because there were lots of things that were very demanding about the part. We had to do a huge sword and axe fight in the middle of the play, which I'd done stage combat before, but never anything like this. We were using actual, I mean, they were blunt swords and axes, but they were still very large pieces of metal, and we had a couple of small accidents, but no major ones, luckily. I gave the other guy 3 stitches on his fingers at one point when he parried in the wrong place. That's my opinion, anyway.
Do you prefer working in the theatre or in film and TV?
I think theatre is the most satisfying work in acting oftentimes, because you get to do it over and over again in front of a live audience, but it doesn't tend to pay as well as film and television, which is also fun, but not as glamorous as people might think it is, I guess.
So being an actor isn't really glamorous?
No, I don't think acting is a glamorous life, particularly in, well, I guess in any way. In theatre, it's, you don't really earn that much money, and you work hard. And film and television work is, it can be a lot of fun. You can get to work with some famous people sometimes, or some very talented people that you admire, and that's a thrilling thing. And yeah, you get to shoot guns, or go on car chases, and all those things are really fun. But most of the time, the 90% of the day, even when you're doing exciting things, you're just sitting and waiting around. You're always waiting around. They're always fixing lights, setting up new camera positions, trying to figure out who's going where, when, and it takes them to film a proper, feature film takes months, and maybe in all that time, only 2 or 3 of those days, all told, is actually you doing anything. So, I think a lot of people get into extra work and stuff because they think, oh, this will be really glamorous, but you end up sort of reading a book about 9 hours a day. And I've never been on a red carpet, so I suppose I can't judge. That looks glamorous.
Have you ever been to a music festival?
Yes. Isle of Wight in the 70s.
What was it like?
There were just thousands and thousands of people just chilling out, doing whatever you wanted to do, and it was just great fun. There was music, dancing, a great memory, actually.
Have you ever been to a music festival?
Yes.
Which ones?
We have a rock festival back home in Ohio that we go to. A lot of my friends and I go to.
What was it like?
I don't know what it's called, but it's just like a whole bunch of alternative music. It's like 2 days long, and you all go, and it's just a fun time, all outside. And there's a ton of people. They're all usually younger, from like college age usually, and they just have a whole bunch of stages set up, and there's just bars in different places, and you can just go and just hang out and listen to some music.
Have you ever been to a music festival?
Yes. Went to Glastonbury.
What was it like?
Incredibly muddy, but great fun. Absolutely so much fun. Didn't get any sleep at all.
Have you ever been to a music festival?
Yes, not for many years. When I was much younger, I went to Bath Music Blues Festival. I've been to Reading Music Festival. I've been to Oh, I can't remember which other ones I've been to, but yes, in the 1970s, early 80s, I went to quite a few.
What was it like?
From a 57-year-old's point of view, at the time they were really exciting. I can remember a long journey down to Bath, sleeping in a field. I can remember expensive food, waking up all night to see the band that you wanted to see and then falling asleep. I can remember being taken back to sleep in somebody's tent and then waking up and realising we were in the wrong tent. I had no idea whose tent we were in the next morning. I can remember feeling slightly sort of sick and hungry all the time I was there. But yeah, it was good, it was exciting.
Have you ever been to a music festival?
No. Oh, yeah, actually. The Big Chill. I went to the Big Chill.
What was it like?
Yeah, it was really good. I went with my dad and my sister, and we went in a camper van. So we camped, and yeah, it was good.
The Promenade concert started way back in 1895. It basically means that people are able to walk around and stand during the music. Very few people attend, actually all of them, except me. Very oddly, we had programmed 2 or 3 requiems in that last 2 weeks of the season. As it turned out, he died just a week later. Unfortunately, I mean, it could have been called absolutely anything.
Sir Nicholas Kenyon was the director of a festival of concerts called the Proms for 12 years. How did the Proms start?
The Promenade concert started way back in 1895 when a brilliant impresario wanted to use a newly built concert hall in London, the Queen's Hall, for a series of popular concerts that really brought classical music to the widest possible audience. There were important classical concerts during the year, but in the summer people tended to go away, society life finished, and so he had the brilliant idea of taking away all the seats on the floor of the hall where the expensive people usually sat and letting people come in and stand there and walk around and have a very informal experience of concert going. The name Proms is an abbreviation of promenade concerts, and it basically means that people are able to walk around and stand during the music.
How long did the Proms last?
The Proms lasts for 2 months in the summer, from the middle of July to the middle of September, and during that period there's 1 concert every day, 2 concerts on many days, 3 concerts on some days. So it's a very, very intense period of music making, and people buy season tickets in order to be able to attend all the concerts, whether they do or not. Very few people attend, actually all of them, except me. And they come and they queue during the day in order to get the best places in the floor of the hall where they stand.
World-class musicians perform at the Proms for much lower fees than they would expect to receive. Why do you think that is?
I think the Proms has an absolutely unique atmosphere. That's what orchestras and conductors who come here say. And so people do want to come and perform. What you get at the Proms is a wonderful mixture of total informality and total concentration. So that although people don't dress up to come to the Proms, they behave how they want, they actually absolutely listen to the music. And that is a feature that so many conductors and orchestras really comment on. The level of concentration is absolutely amazing.
There must have been many truly memorable concerts during your time as director of the Proms. Could you tell us about one of them?
The death of Princess Diana was particularly difficult because, of course, she lived just across the road in Kensington Palace from where the proms happen in the Royal Albert Hall. We changed some programmes to make them more appropriate. On the day of her funeral, we put in Foray's Requiem to the programme. Very oddly, we had programmed 2 or 3 requiems in that last 2 weeks of the season, and they fitted very, very well. We then lost another major figure of the musical world, the conductor Sir George Sholty, who was to have conducted the Verdi Requiem on the last Friday of the season. And he had been a very good friend of Princess Diana, and indeed had rung me up just after Diana's death to say that he wanted to dedicate this Verdi Requiem to her memory. As it turned out, he died just a week later, and so another conductor, Colin Davis, took over that Verdi Requiem and dedicated it to both of them, and it was a fantastically charged atmosphere in the hall. I can't remember such an electric occasion as that.
I understand there was also another spooky coincidence in the programme at the time of Diana's death. Could you tell us about it?
A wonderful American composer called John Adams had written an absolutely wonderful piece which we were going to do on the last night of the proms in 1997. Unfortunately, I mean, it could have been called absolutely anything, this piece. It's a whirling, abstract piece of fanfare music. Unfortunately, he had called it Short Ride in a Fast Machine. And so it was perfectly obvious from the first moment that we had to take that piece out and change the programme.
Are there any embarrassing or amusing experiences you remember?
Well, one of the things that was a real challenge to the proms was the arrival of the mobile phone. Because in the beginning people didn't know how to use them, when to switch them off, and the Albert Hall is a very, very big space, and mobile phones would go off in concerts, and it could be very embarrassing. Usually, because they were in the middle of the music, conductors just ignored them, and people got embarrassed and switched them off. But there was one particular incident that was just so awful, because Stravinsky's The Rite of Spring starts with a very, very exposed, quiet bassoon solo, and Simon Rattle and the Berlin Philharmonic, making one of their first appearances together at the proms, had just begun that piece when a mobile phone went off very loudly in the stalls, and Simon Rattle stopped the bassoonist and turned round and glared at this person in the stalls, and there was a round of applause and everything. So anyway, it restarted, and the performance was a spectacular success, and it was wonderful. But this was such an incident that he had actually stopped it, that it became the subject of a lot of media attention, and there were paragraphs in the papers. And I had to go and be interviewed the next day at home for a Radio 4 programme about mobile phones going off in concerts. And in the middle of this interview, my own phone went off. And it's a wonderfully classic little bit of tape. My embarrassment at the same thing happening to me.
What's your favourite city?
I would have said Prague, actually, but I've recently been to Stockholm a couple of times, and I loved it. Stockholm is fantastic. It's built on 14 islands, lots of water, which I love, lots of interesting museums. Stockholm's lovely.
Which city would you most like to visit?
I went to Cape Town earlier on this year, and we were only there for 5 days, and there was so much that I didn't see that I would love to go back to Cape Town. can see Robben Island and some of the apartheid museums and learn more about Nelson Mandela.
What's your favourite city?
Probably Delhi, because of the difference in culture and the monuments that are there and the people, and looking at the cultural differences of how we live and how they live. And I just find everyone so nice, so friendly.
Which city would you most like to visit?
I would most like to visit Barcelona because I've heard the shopping's very good.
What's your favourite city?
Would be New York. I like the hustle and bustle and the business, and just the overall feeling of being in that city. It's just really nice. Just makes you feel really live all the time. Lots and lots of things to do, and just goes on. It just doesn't stop.
Which city would you most like to visit?
I'd like to go to Sydney, see what that's like.
What's your favourite big city?
My favourite big city, I risk sounding partial, but it would have to be my hometown. It would have to be Rome. I think it's, a lot of the reasons are no need to explain, but I think it's very happening, more than people think, and it's the right compromise between laid-back lifestyle and the positive aspects of living in a metropolis.
Which city would you most like to visit?
Either Casablanca, just like that. I'm just fascinated with that part of the world.
What's your favourite city?
London, because it's got all the shops, so I can come and go shopping.
Which city would you most like to visit?
Anywhere. I'd like to go to Australia. Anywhere hot, anywhere with shops, anywhere.
What makes duck tours more interesting in terms of a tour as opposed to other tours? But that, fortunately, is quite a rare thing. And that's the first statue that I'm aware of that has been erected whilst someone is still alive. Additionally, we have a number of heroes in our country.
John Bigos is the Managing Director of London Duck Tours Limited. This company used ducks, renovated World War II amphibious vehicles which can travel on land and water. What makes a duck tour better than a normal sightseeing tour?
What makes duck tours more interesting in terms of a tour as opposed to other tours is the ability to be able to go on the land and the river in one tour at the same time. That has a great benefit for all our clients. We also have a very small vessel which only takes 30 people, and that allows you to have a much more intimate relationship with your clients, which makes it a wonderful experience, which you don't get when you go on ordinary, predetermined, computerised tours.
Some people might say that taking tourists on such a busy river is a bit dangerous. Have you ever had any accidents?
In terms of accidents, we have had breakdowns that mean that we have to drop the anchor in the river, which is similar to having to use the brake on the land, and we've had to recover both our boat and our passengers. But that, fortunately, is quite a rare thing, but it adds to the fact that the tour is unique and no one else can do it. So it is an experience, which can include being recovered by another duck.
Do you ever have to rescue other people on the river?
When we are on the river, we are one of the most frequent users of this part of the river, and people will often fall or jump off Westminster Bridge, Lambeth Bridge, or indeed Vauxhall Bridge, and therefore we will be within the vicinity and often have to rescue people who have either fallen off accidentally or deliberately tried to commit suicide. So in terms of the river, it is a very serious river with a very fast flowing tide, and we treat it with the utmost respect.
Do you have many difficult customers?
We do have people who come in a very unprepared manner. For example, a lady in a mink coat who then gets wet, and she asks for the mink coat to be specifically clean, which will cost us a whole day's revenue, which the coat was very expensive. And the good news is that she was travelling abroad back to her homeland, and unfortunately we were unable to get it cleaned within the time that she asked, and in the circumstances it didn't cost us any money. So those sort of people can be difficult, as well as your normal customers who either don't think they've had the service they requested, or the tour was not up to a standard that they thought they would like, probably because they're afraid of water.
What are the most popular sites?
The most popular sites that get people really excited are Parliament Square, where we have the new Nelson Mandela statue, and that's the first statue that I'm aware of that has been erected whilst someone is still alive, and that's very exciting. Additionally, we have a number of heroes in our country, and Trafalgar Square with all the fountains, and Nelson's column really excite people. And finally, we obviously have MI6, which is where our vessels go into the water, and it is also where the film The Living Daylights and The World Is Not Enough started, where the boat came out of the second floor window, and as a duck we replicate that in our own style.
What are your personal favourite sites on the tour?
I personally like the Houses of Parliament, because I think it's a beautifully designed building and it's got some very, very interesting features. I also favour the statue of Emmeline Pankhurst, because that is quite interesting in so much as it was only in 1928 that women were given the vote, and yet it seems so many years ago. And then in terms of large sites, obviously things like Buckingham Palace and Horse Guards are very interesting as well because of the history.
What do you think is the best and worst thing about London for a tourist?
I think the best thing is the fantastic variety and depth of culture that we have in our capital city here. We have over 200 different cultures and nations who live here in the centre of London, and it makes for a fantastic cosmopolitan city with so much variety that it is impossible to get bored. It is a fabulous capital to come to as a tourist. In terms of the worst things for tourists in London, I don't think our capital has yet reached the standards of service that a lot of other cities have, where you don't get good quality food at a reasonable price on time quite often, and you have a lot of delays in terms of travel and congestion, and therefore there are many things that can still be done to improve the quality of service for a fantastic capital city.
Are there any English words that are used in your language?
Yes, for example, hamburger. It's used, I think, worldwide, but in Poland we say hamburger. Yes, maybe computer. In Poland, computer. There are plenty of words like that. Plenty of words that are about cuisine. Hot dog in Polish. Oh, really plenty of words like that.
Do you think it would be better to use your own words?
No, I don't think so, because they're used everywhere in this world, and why not in Poland?
Are there any English words that are used in your language?
Yes, I like. Well, no, they're not. I don't think there are a lot of English words, but there are French words that sound English, like parking, which actually doesn't make sense in English. But it's a car park, and we call it parking. And it's not French at all, but we have a lot of things like that because English is cool, and so we try to make our words sound English. Yeah.
Do you think it would be better to use your own words?
No. I like the idea that there are words that you can understand in every country. It brings nations, people closer, you know.
Are there any English words that are used in your language?
An English word that's used in Italian language. Everything to do with technology, everything to do with the internet and the internet itself. Well, someone could argue that internet is actually Latin, but say download. We've given up saying the Italian version of downloading, which is scaricare, and most people just go with downloadare, which sounds very odd to the Italian ear, but we're going with it.
Do you think it would be better to use your own words?
I don't think it's necessary to set off on a crusade to defend the language, in so much as, you know, specific areas which are just the domain of another language. In Italian is the main domain in saying music. No one complains around the world because you say pianissimo when you have to play softly.
Are there any English words that are used in your language?
Too many, I must say. Yeah, it's we forget a lot of German words and replace them by English words, and I mean they are pronounced in the same way. I miss that because I like Spanish as well, and they have so many. They have like words for computer or skateboard and things like that, which we don't have, and we take all the English words. And if there are new inventions or stuff like that, we don't invent new words, we just take them, and I think it's a pity not to do the opposite.
Do you think it would be better to use your own words?
It's part of culture, and I think we should maintain that. You can be open to other languages and cultures, but at the same time you should keep your own one, I think.
Normally, dictionary makers will wait about 5 years to see whether or not a word will survive. And it went into the mainstream incredibly quickly. One of my favourite is chauffeurs, which is a cross between a chair and a sofa. Basically, citizen journalists, if you like, going around snapping celebrities with their WAP-enabled phone. So Cool, for example, was around probably in the late 19th century. They are still brand names, but we've somehow imported them.
Susie Dent is a well-known English lexicographer who also appears in the popular British TV quiz Countdown. Could you give us an estimate of how many new words come into the English language each year?
A lot of people ask me how many new words are born in any particular year, and the quick answer to that is no one knows, because thousands and thousands and thousands of new words are made up every second. What we do know is that in the 20th century, about 900,000 new words went into the Oxford English Dictionary, which is the vast, vast dictionary that Oxford keeps going basically constantly, tracking current language and historical language. So that means on average about 900 words each year made it in a significant enough way to get into the dictionary.
How does a new word or expression get into the dictionary?
Normally dictionary makers will wait about 5 years to see whether or not a word will survive before they put it in. So they have quite strict criteria. There are exceptions to that, and bling is a prime example. It went into the dictionary very, very soon. Bling is a wonderful word that is used by journalists particularly to sum up the sort of celebrity-obsessed, very materialistic opening years of the 21st century. But in fact, it was coined in 1999, and it was coined by a rapper. And I think it's an absolutely beautiful example of how US black slang particularly, and hip-hop and rap have had a major influence on British slang particularly today. And it was used by the rapper Baby Gangster, or BG. And it was probably suggestive of lights flashing off jewellery, so it was bling, and that's how it was taken up. And it went into the mainstream incredibly quickly.
Where do new words come from?
One of the main processes by which new words come about today is one called blending, where you put two words together to form a new one. One of my favourite is chauffeurs, which is a cross between a chair and a sofa, and waparazzi as well, which I think is really clever. And waparazzi is basically citizen journalists, if you like, going around snapping celebrities with their WAP-enabled phone. And so people thought, oh, we'll call them the waparazzi. So that's quite a good example of how new words are coming about. Mandals, another one, male sandals, or man sandals, is another one that's been doing the rounds in Britain anyway. Another process by which new words are born is by bringing older words back. And so cool, for example, was around probably in the late 19th century. Then it was popularised by jazz circles, Charlie Parker and people like that. And now it's just, it's used by young people everywhere. Another way in which new words are coined, if you like, is when old words come back and take on a slightly different meaning. So again, they're not completely new at all, but we've adapted them to our new environment. A great example of this is wireless, whereas our grandparents, certainly in Britain, used to listen to the wireless, and it meant a portable radio. Today, wireless has everything to do with broadband and the way that we use our computers in a cable-free way.
Any other ways?
English has long been a hoover, really, of foreign languages, and it is made up of so many different words from different cultures, right back from Latin and Greek to modern influences now. Food is a wonderful example of that, where we just take different cuisines from around the world and we introduce obviously examples like sushi, sashimi, that sort of thing, into our language. Brand names, another key way in which we generate new words, if you like. If you think about Kleenex or Hoover, as I mentioned, those used to be brand names. Then they are still brand names, but we've somehow imported them so that we know exactly what we're talking about, and they mean anything generic.
Do you have any favourite new words of the last few years?
I have so many favourites from the last few years. Ever since I've been first writing the language reports, I have to collect my favourite new words of the year. I loved the idea of a marmalade dropper, which was basically a news item that made you drop your toast in the morning. And in America it was called a muffin choker.